Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth and final session of VWO's webinar series on conversion optimization. I hope you're excited to spend another Tuesday with VWO. My name is Utkarsh Rai and I take up some exciting co-marketing initiatives at VWO. You can reach out to me on Twitter with today's hashtag #AskVWO for any question during the session. You can use the GoToWebinar question wizard to ask us anything during the session. We'll take them up at the end of the session. For today's session, we have Mr. Vivek Vilatia and Mr. Anshul Gurbakshani from the product team of VWO. Also joining him in this presentation, we have Mr. Prem Kujur, who takes up customer success at VWO. We welcome you guys. In this session, we are discussing how to scale your testing program. So let's begin. I would request Vivek to take it over from here. Vivek, over to you.
Thanks, Utkarsh. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining in today. I'm Vivek, and I'm a senior product manager at VWO. And today we'll be talking about how to scale your testing program. So in the previous webinars in this series, we spoke about checking your readiness for conversion optimization program, researching visitor behavior to come up with insights about your problem areas on your website, and then building data-backed hypotheses and managing your testing roadmap. In this session, we'll talk about how you can scale your testing program by running more advanced A/B tests, making sense out of your test reports, and finding out what you can do with inconclusive tests. In the latter part of this webinar, we would love to take your questions, and we'll try our best to answer them. Also, we'll be using VWO to talk about capabilities in this webinar, but you can definitely use any other popular testing tools to achieve most, if not all of the things. So let's jump right in and get started. So before we start talking about advanced A/B tests, let's do a quick recap of the basics and understand what A/B testing means and what are the different ways you can test your hypotheses. So A/B testing is a method to use data to arrive to a conclusion, thereby removing subjectivity and bias. A/B testing isn't anything new, but has been in practice since many decades in many other fields like clinical research, telecom, retail, etc. When applied to websites, it is about comparing two or more versions of your web page and determining the best versions for your defined conversion goal. Now let's have a quick look at the types of A/B or at the types of tests which you can run on your websites. So number one is A/B test, which is the most popular method, which lets you A/B test one version of your content with another. In fact, out of all the tests that our customers run, about 80% tests are A/B tests. The second one is the split URL test, and they're the way to go if you are going to test extremely large changes, like a completely revamped website which is hosted on a separate URL. The third one is the multivariate test, or popularly called as MVT, for testing multiple elements on a page to know how they interact with each other and basically to find out the best arrangement or the best combination. Typically, for running MVTs, you need sufficient amount of traffic on your website, as you are going to be testing multiple different combinations. As a rule of thumb, if your website traffic is greater than 100,000 unique visitors per month, you can definitely go ahead and run MVTs. So that was a brief about A/B testing, and now let's move on to understanding how you can start building and running more advanced A/B tests. So what do we actually mean by simple A/B tests? We mean tests which are pretty easy to set up through visual editors, don't really require a full-fledged team, and provide smaller, quick wins. Examples can be CTA changes, minor changes in your website layout, copy changes, etc. These tests are a great launchpad into the world of A/B testing, and we definitely encourage you to start with smaller tests when you're new to A/B testing. You should get your feet wet, get a good hang of testing, and then move on to bolder and more impactful tests. But once you have matured as a website optimizer, simple A/B testing can only take you so far, as you tend to reach a particular level of saturation. As you mature along with your competitors, along with the market, and along with your audience, you should look for more avenues to grow your business. That's when you start planning and testing more impactful and complex changes to move the needle. For this, you need a solid conversion optimization program, the right people in your team. And so we actually spoke about how to build the right team for your conversion optimization program in the first webinar of this series. And also another important part is taking buy-in from your management. Another thing is having the right kind of tools to support this evolution to running more advanced A/B tests. With advanced tests, you can aim to A/B test more complex use cases like checkout flows, onboarding experience, and any kind of algorithm or any kind of a logic built into your website. In fact, once you get started with advanced A/B tests, there is actually no limitation to your imagination. So let's check out how to set up more advanced A/B tests. So there are actually 4 main steps when you are setting up your test. And these are basically defining the pages where you want to run your test, setting up the target audience, making all the necessary changes to your website, and also setting up the right metrics which you want to improve upon. So let's start with setting up pages for your test. Now for simple A/B test, you can just define a page URL and configure your test. But what if you want to run this test on multiple similar pages? For this, you can use the advanced URL feature. It is a pretty useful feature which actually lets you configure your test for a similar set of pages. To explain this in more details, let's take a simple scenario. So I'm going to take the example of an e-commerce portal. Suppose you have identified the product description pages as a problem area because you see a lot of visitors dropping off from the description page, especially for products which have tons of technical specifications listed. So on the basis of this analysis, you formulate your hypothesis, and then you want to test a condensed version of the product description page, and you want to run this test for a particular product type. Let's say that product type is mobile phones. So since all of these pages share the same kind of a layout, you can make your changes on one of them and then let VWO copy those changes to all the different pages. All you need to do is basically identify how the URLs of your website are structured and create a pattern to identify similar set of pages. Suppose for our example, let's say I know that the way these URLs are configured, they have the they have the structure where all the product description pages will have /p/, which denotes that they are basically a product description page. And secondly, the value of the query parameter PID, which is actually product ID, will start with MOB for all products under the mobile category. It is similar to what you see on your screen right now. So what I can do is I can use the pattern as you're seeing on the screen to ensure that all mobile product pages are included for this particular test. So this way you can set up your test to run on all the pages for mobile devices. Using advanced URL option, you can also write complex regex and build patterns to run tests on the desired pages. So that was the part where you saw how you can set up patterns to run tests on similar set of pages. Now let's switch over to the audience part where you can actually build complex targeting rules. So let's continue with the same example and also understand how you can set up targeting conditions for this particular test. Let's assume that you did your analysis, your research, and your research suggests that you should target this particular test just to logged in visitors of your website who are from, let's say, India or have INR or Indian rupee as their preferred currency. You can identify logged in users by looking for a cookie, and then you can identify preferred currency and send it to a JS variable inside VWO. Now what you can do is you can define the custom segment using the targeting option. So here you can actually put the JS variable check and the location check inside the bracket with the OR condition, and then check for the cookie with an AND condition. So using the brackets is a great way to group the conditions and apply AND and OR rules. And we have actually seen our power users effectively using this whole targeting capability to build really complex targeting rules. Moving on to another critical part of setting up your A/B test, which is where you make the changes or make the variations, right? So for this, you can actually use the visual editor to create different variations to test, right? But there can be some complex changes which are difficult to set up through the visual editor. In such cases, code editor is your best bet. So the code editor gives you complete control and flexibility to make complex changes, and it is actually a favorite amongst all our conversion optimization experts. Let's continue with the same example where we made the changes using the code editor. As we mentioned earlier, we are trying to reduce the drop-off from the product page by making a condensed version of the product description page. So as you see on the screen, on the left-hand side, you see the control, and on the right-hand side, you see the variation, which we actually coded up. We did the coding inside the code editor, and you see those multiple tabs out there. So it's a condensed form of that product description page. So we achieved this by using the code editor, and we wrote some JS code inside the code editor, and we were able to quickly see all those changes in front of us. So such kind of changes wouldn't have been possible if you wanted to do it through the visual editor, but with the code editor, it's pretty fast and very reliable. Now let's switch over to another part of setting up your test, which is conditional test activation. So once you have set up your test pages, and you've set up your audience and made all the changes for the test, there is another aspect of test setup which can help you run the test only for the relevant audience, and it also prevent it'll also prevent you from wasting your test visitors quota. This feature is called as manual activation or conditional activation. By default, campaigns or tests run as soon as a qualified visitor lands on a page where the test is running. But in case if you want the visitor to be included in the test, only if the visitor performs a particular action, then you can use the manual campaign activation option. Let's take an example. Suppose you have a SaaS website and you offer a free trial of your product, and visitors can come to your website and sign up for the free trial by clicking on a CTA and then filling up a form. You realized that many visitors just abandon the free trial sign up form, and you definitely want to change that. So you also found out a cool new way of implementing a form similar to something like a type form, and you want to A/B test this new form against the older one. So now, since the form opens when someone clicks on the sign up CTA, should you actually include all the visitors landing on the home page as your audience, or should you include only those visitors in the test who just happen to click on the CTA? So by triggering the test on CTA click, you ensure that only the relevant users are becoming part of the test, and also by triggering that campaign on the button click, you'll save up on your tested visitor quota. For implementing this, you just need to use a small snippet of code inside your test and use it whenever you want to trigger a particular campaign. So I took an example of this sign up form triggering on a click of a button, but you can very well trigger a campaign on, let's say, when a visitor scrolls to a certain depth in your page. So that was about conditional test activation. Now I'll pass it on to Prem, who is from the customer success team at VWO, and he will take you through other key steps in setting up advanced A/B tests. Over to you, Prem.
Thanks, Vivek, and thanks for sharing those valuable inputs. Hello, everyone. I'm Prem, Customer Success Manager at VWO. I work with some of the largest enterprise accounts based out of Europe across different industry verticals like e-commerce, travel, SaaS, and many other. I work closely with their optimization team, assisting them to get the best out of their testing ideas. Today, I'll be talking about measuring the right metrics. As Vivek previously stressed, on the various aspects to set up an advanced test, it is as critical to ensure that you measure the right metrics to get the desired results from your tests. In this session, I'll be emphasizing on the various metrics that you can take into account, which will help you measure the success of your campaigns. A majority of the people would just add revenue as a metric, no matter what changes are being tested. The rationale behind this behavior is that everyone is making efforts to optimize their website and to maximize their overall conversions, hence increasing the revenue. Though revenue is an important metric, we would be focusing on the micro goals, which would eventually lead up to ensure that your macro goals are met. Each time you remove friction from any part of your website, you're pushing more users down the funnel. But at the same time, it's not wise to measure the success of your test using that metric. We need to keep in mind that these small changes take you a step closer towards achieving a larger objective. Now, this may seem very intuitive, but you're more prone to making such a mistake while testing during the last steps of your funnel. Let's take into account an example. Let's say You made a change on your cart page. That change can directly impact the successful checkouts. While revenue is an important goal here, progression rate to the checkout page is more important as it's a direct impact to the changes you have tested. This is how you can judge what should be the primary metric to measure the success of your test. Take the cart page test example again. There can be a scenario where your test did positively impact the progression rate, but had a negative impact on your overall revenue. In such cases, it requires a lot more probing to be done. Hence, it's important to set up secondary metrics too, and not just have one primary metric to measure the effectiveness of your campaign or tests. Integrating your tests with third-party analytics tool also help you track your predefined goals. Most testing tools support seamless integration with a tool of your choice. Ensure that the primary metrics measure the direct impact of the changes and more uh, uh, direct impact of your changes and all other relevant and important metrics to a secondary. Now that we've set up the tests and campaigns, what next? You would want to make it live and see the magic, but you're missing out on a critical aspect of A/B testing. Never make your tests live without proper sanity checks. It's like the secret sauce to your recipe for testing. Anything that looks good might be too good to be true. The same case is with A/B testing. A test which might look good within the editor might not look the same in the real live environment. With users across the world being connected even more, the need for a responsive site is increasing. Hence, it's even more important that you check previews at different devices like desktop, mobile, or tablet to ensure that changes are getting rendered appropriate to the device type. Don't just focus on the previews and the visual aspects of your tests. Ensure that you check the finer details like goals and segments if you set up any. This is crucial to ensure that the underlying reason on why you're running the test produces the desired outcome. There are many options in which you can preview your tests. Quick previews is the first level of checks to see if the variant looks fine. More often than not, users check the screenshot and conclude that the test would be fine, which might not be the case. Which is where cross-browser previews are essential, since different browsers render changes differently. Hence, it's always recommended that you check multiple browsers for your site's performance. Many of our clients have a global footprint, and it is critical for them to ensure that the site performs uniformly for all the users landing on their site, irrespective of the geography, device, operating system, or the browser type from which the site is being accessed. Our larger clients with established CRO teams go through rigorous checks before ensuring the test goes live, as there's a lot at stake. They leverage live previews, which are a key component for them, checking for segmentation inclusion, goal triggering, and many other conditions which they might have included in their test. Since they've been the advocates of testing, they understand that tests might behave different in different environments. Most importantly is previewing on the live environment. This is different from what we've covered earlier, as previously we were checking the live preview within VWO, but not in the production environment. Make the test live and set the targeting to your company's internal IP address to have the internal audience within your company or organization check the site to ensure consistency is maintained for all. You can always flush the campaign data once everything looks fine, and then remove the targeting to make the campaign live for everyone. Our tech-savvy conversion experts out there are very cautious and go that extra mile to check the test even after they've made it live. They look for cookies being created by using plugins. Since different cookies represent changes from different variations, they monitor the site even after activating the test to ensure the cookies are getting generated and the changes are rendering as designed. You can also collaborate on the previews by quickly sharing the direct preview links with external members to ensure consistency. Since majority of the traffic is from mobile users, we've made it easy to share the previews on mobile devices. You can simply scan the QR code within the preview mode and open up the previews on your mobile device. When all of the above precautions are taken, which we covered, we still have conversion experts out there who are cautious enough that they do not expose their entire traffic of their site to the tests. They do what we call as a staged rollout by exposing a percentage of the audience to the test and thereby incrementally increasing the percentage of audience to ensure all goes well before rolling out the test to 100% of the audience. These measures and precautions taken by many such CRO leaders give them an assurance that the test would deliver on their goals and be able to derive better results from their tests. Now I'll be passing it on to Anshul, who will be shedding some light on various reports to get tangible results for your efforts.
Thank you, Prem, for your insights on setting up the right metrics and sharing the importance of sanity checks. Hi, everyone. I'm Anshul, Associate Product Manager at VWO, and I'm going to take the next few minutes to talk about possible outcomes of that an A/B test can have and what to do with it. All optimizers want their test to conclude with an actionable insight. All testing tools employ either frequentist or Bayesian-based stats model to derive these outcomes. VWO Smart Stats, our Bayesian-powered statistics engine, was designed specifically to suit the needs of an optimizer. With it, VWO directly addresses your real question: what is the probability of a variation beating control? It also helps you plan your experiments better, have a more accurate reason to end tests, and really understand how close or far apart the control and variation are. Suppose you have a red web page design and you want to test if changing it to blue design will help you convert more visitors to customers. You set up an experiment in your A/B testing tool and measure the conversions for each page. A traditional frequentist-based A/B testing tool calculates the likelihood of the conversion rate of each page considering the results it just saw. If the likelihood is the same, then it can't declare any winner. At this point, you're left with two choices. You can either keep testing for more data or try another variation. Maybe an orange design works better in this case. In the same scenario, our statistics engine could tell you that the blue design has a 50% probability of 10% higher conversion rate, while there is a 50% probability that both designs will have the same conversion rate. With that insight, wouldn't you want to deploy the blue design given that at worst it will have the same conversion rate as the red one, and at the same time you will have a 50% chance at increasing your conversion rate? VWO Smart Stats help you do just that. Let's take this report from VWO and discuss how to make sense of it. In this case, our primary metric is revenue, and that's what the results are based on. The graph here shows the range of revenue per visitor. This is shown as a range because we consider reporting the conversion rate as one number fundamentally wrong. As with any statistical experiment, uncertainty is always present. Instead of just expressing the number of conversions as a percentage, VWO Smart Stats calculates with 99% probability a conversion rate range where the true conversion rate of your website lies. The more data it collects, the shorter this range of highest likely value gets. Below the graph, the chance to beat metric tells you the probability of a variation beating control and the probability of a variation beating all other variations. Along with it is potential loss, which is the lift you can lose if you deploy A as a winner, where in fact B was actually better. Our aim is to ensure that we minimize the potential loss, and hence we use it as a primary metric to declare smart decisions, which you can also see in this report at the top of it. Smart decision is recommended when there is no clear winner after a test is run. VWO suggests smart decision when the potential loss associated with deploying the leading variation is less than the threshold of caring. The caring threshold is a factor of the current conversion rate, the expected lift in the conversion rate, and the experiment mode, which can either be quick learnings or balanced mode or a high certainty mode. Basically, by deploying smart decision, you will most likely not lose anything, and in the best case scenario, you might even gain something out of it. Another possible outcome of a test is a clear winner. If you continue the test to collect more data and the conversion rate ranges become more precise, and when there's at least 1% difference between the lower limit of a variation's conversion range and the upper limit of the control's conversion range, then the variation is declared as a certain winner. With this, we have eliminated the need for you to worry about complex statistics, and we've simplified the A/B testing reports. There are a few best practices that you should follow to ensure that you're running a proper experiment. It is definitely recommended that you run your test for at least a week. This ensures that you have the traffic data from all days of the week. Also, along with the primary goal, have multiple secondary goals, which include micro goals, which are eventually contributing to the business goals. And ensure that your primary goals represent the direct and exclusive impact of the changes that are being tested. I also want to take a few minutes and discuss a third scenario where you don't see a clear winner or a smart decision at the end of the test. 1 in 8 tests create a major impact on conversion. If your test doesn't have a clear conclusion, it could be that the test goals are not giving the desired output, which in turn doesn't give you the confidence on the test results. However, there are always some insights hidden in your data, and there are ways that you can identify them. A lot of blogs will rightly suggest that you start with segmenting your test data, as it helps identify if the changes improve the conversion rate for a particular segment of visitors. A few ways in which you can segment your test visitors are segmentation by browser type, which can also help you uncover if there were any technical issues with the test for a particular browser. If you uncover that, now you know what needs to be fixed. You can also segment your visitors by the device type, as the mobile visitors and the desktop visitors may respond differently to the changes. And it can be that one of these segments responded positively to your changes. You can focus on this visitor segment and maybe run another test to validate your hypotheses. Another example could be segmenting by traffic sources, such as email, social, search traffic, etc. If you have integrated your test with Google Analytics, you can also use it to check for your custom segments. Apart from that, you can also try testing bolder changes where you experiment with things that will actually make a difference to your visitors. An example could be revamping the flight booking experience entirely, where earlier you had a multi-step form and now you test a new single-page version of it. You can also re-examine your hypotheses and update your assumptions based on the test results. You might end up discarding the hypotheses entirely, or you could end up with a different way to test the same. One question to help you do this can be, do the visitors of my website really care about the changes I've introduced? You can also look at other parameters that were successful and for now implement those changes along with trying new ideas. When everything else fails, you can go with control as your preferred variation. To summarize, always slice and dice your data before giving up on a test. Try testing radical changes and implement any hidden winners. There's just one thing that you need to take care of in this scenario. Ensure that you don't use segments that have very less data. Let me take an example here. Say the variation 1 works better for users from Boston who use Firefox browser on a Windows machine and who land on your website as a result of your email campaign. If the total number of users in this segment is just 78, this is not a very helpful number, and you should be wary of that. Along with it, I would also like to reiterate a previously mentioned point that you need to ensure that you have done a proper QA of your test before making it live. Also ensure that you're not running multiple tests simultaneously in the same part of the journey that you're A/B testing, so that the test is free of any other influence. This is it from my side, and I'll now let Utkarsh take back the control, and we'll take a few questions from you. Over to you, Utkarsh.
Thanks, Anshul. We'll be starting the Q&A session now. And as usual, we're going to start with my own question because I'm the curious kid here. So yeah, so in this conversion optimization series, which we have been running for the past 4 weeks now, we learned how to conduct any kind of website testing and find out the winning variation out of it. So however, what's next? Like, how can somebody maximize on these gains? Can you guys suggest some immediate steps which one can put into action after finding the winning variation? Vivek, would you like to take this question?
Great, good questions, Utkarsh. So so once you have set up your test, you have made it live, and you see it, see one of the variation winning. The logical next step is basically to deploy that winning variation, or basically making the winning variation live on production, right? So there are two ways to go about it. One is just wait for your developers to actually code up the winning variation on your website, or what you can do is let's say if you're using VWO, you can just clone that particular campaign and just disable all other variations and move all the traffic to the winning variation. So this is what we have noticed, we have seen many of our customers do, because they just want to save up on development time, because the gains that they are that are at stake are pretty high. So they don't mind just cloning that campaign and disabling all other variation and just making the winning variation live. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that answers pretty much. So there are a few questions coming up. Benny has a question. Uh, our testing team makes a lot of silly mistakes while making an A/B test live. How can we avoid making such mistakes? Is there a checklist which we can refer to? So I think Prem discussed about best practices and the things which to avoid while making a test live. So Prem, would you like to answer this question?
Absolutely, Utkarsh. Uh, so there are many aspects that I covered for sanity checks. So as I said, there are many steps that you can take into account before making a test live. So we have quick previews, we have cross-browser testing, and most of these features are readily available on most of the tools that are there out there in regards to A/B testing. So the options are many. It just is a frame of reference which you would want to take as a starting point. So as I mentioned, as the first step, it's always good to see how the tool, or more like how the test is set up within the editor itself, and definitely trying out different browsers, and then making the test live for an internal audience is always a good practice, because you're not exposing your tests to an external audience there. So it's a good way to get feedback within the company as well, to know what currently is working and what are the areas of improvement that you can look at. I hope that suffices.
Great, great. Another question coming up is from Jan. Jan has a question that how do I make the second version of the page with changes effective? If I understand the question correctly, what she meant is uh, how to implement low-level changes to a page. So I think it's based on the editor part. Maybe Vivek, you can take this up.
Yeah, sure, Utkarsh. So actually, that's pretty straightforward when you're using any of the popular A/B testing tools in the market. Almost all of them come up with these visual editors and also the code editors. So if you want to make changes, any kind of changes to your web page, you can just load up your website inside a visual editor and click and drag and drop and make all the changes on your page. Or if you are looking to uh, make some advanced changes on your website, some complex changes, you can go ahead and use the code editor and code up. If you are comfortable coding in JavaScript, you can make all those changes inside the code editor. So this is a standard part of the standard offering of most A/B testing tools, which can help you make changes to your pages. Sounds
Great.
good?
One last question which we're gonna take is coming from Jeff. Jeff is asking more on the basis of a recommendation, but like I'll break it into a question like, how do we differentiate between primary goals and secondary goals for home pages? Should be dependent on revenue, or they should be dependent on the click-through rate? So maybe Vivek can start and
Utkarsh, this is Anshul, and I'd like to start on this one. I would say that the primary goal of a test should be the one that has the direct and the exclusive impact from the changes that you've made. So, for example, if it's a homepage test and you're changing something in the design that is meant to improve the progression rate to the subsequent pages, that progression rate should be the primary goal for that particular campaign. However, it is definitely recommended that you also include other metrics uh, that would complement the progression rate, as well as metrics that are affected or that are valid some further down the funnel. So one example could be revenue. You could also set up revenue as a secondary metric, As well as you can also set up the progression rate to say third step in the funnel to see if the effects of the changes uh, uh, are also reflected there.
Perfect. So, Vivek, Anshul, and Prem, thanks a lot for taking out the time to come here and share your experience with us. Thanks to all the attendees for attending this session. We'll come back again next year with some interesting and exciting topics around the world of conversion optimization. This is Utkarsh Rai, your host, signing off with early Christmas and New Year greetings. Till then, keep optimizing.